therapist Kristen Jacobson.
Hey everyone, I'm Kristen, the anxiety therapist, and today I'm going to talk about assuming the worst and understanding anxiety's impact on your relationships, and then what you can do about it, how to stop. So if you've ever caught yourself in a situation where, despite evidence to the contrary, you're just convinced that things are going to go wrong. So maybe you didn't get a quick response to a text and you assume the person is mad at you, or a project at work hits a snag and then suddenly you're convinced that your boss is going to fire you. If that sounds familiar, just know that you're not alone. And this tendency to assume the worst is often linked to anxiety and an anxious attachment style in relationships. And so while it might feel like you're just being realistic or cautious, there's a deeper reason that your brain defaults to this. So from an evolutionary standpoint, assuming the worst was helpful, right? Our brains are wired to prioritize survival over happiness. And back in the day, that meant constantly scanning the environment for danger. So if our ancestors saw something move in the bushes, they were going to assume it was a predator rather than a gust of wind. So, being overly cautious probably saved a lot of lives. But fast forward to our modernized society today, and while we no longer need to dodge saber-toothed tigers, our brains are still on high alert for potential threats. But the difference is now these threats aren't physical, they're emotional. And this is where anxiety steps in. So anxiety is really your brain's way of telling you, hey, something might go wrong, so let's go ahead and prepare for it. And while that can be helpful in small doses or certain situations, constantly expecting the worst can really backfire. And this is particularly when it comes to relationships. So anxiety is a protective mechanism, right? It's sort of like putting on emotional armor, and we're trying to shield ourselves from getting hurt. If you're already expecting the worst, then we think any disappointment that comes along won't really feel as crushing because we've mentally prepared for it. But that's not exactly how this works. Instead, it ends up turning into this self-sabotage spiral. And usually it stems from past experiences. So if you've been burned or betrayed by people in the past, maybe friends let you down, or a partner who was unfaithful, it's natural to build those psychological walls, right? You learn, whether it's consciously or not, that being vulnerable leads to pain. And so you sort of make this subconscious vow not to let that happen again. And assuming the worst then becomes your way of staying in control, because in your mind, if you expect people to disappoint you, you won't be caught off guard when they do. So on the surface, this sounds like a decent strategy, but it's really a short-term fix that leads to long-term issues. And it truly doesn't protect you from the disappointment you're attempting to avoid. It actually reinforces a negative narrative, the idea that you can't trust anyone. And when you believe you can't trust anyone, you're less likely to let people in, which limits your ability to form those deep, meaningful connections that we need as human beings. So let's say you meet someone new, but instead of being open and giving them the benefit of the doubt, you assume that they'll eventually betray you or disappoint you, just like people in your past. So you have your guard up, either consciously or subconsciously. This might mean you're less open, you don't fully engage with them, you don't share things that are personal. So over time, this creates distance in the relationships or difficulty in forming one in the first place. And the other person will obviously sense this and, maybe start pulling away. And when they do, then you tell yourself, see, I knew it, I can't trust anyone. This is self-sabotage in action. By expecting the worst, you actually contribute to the very outcome you're trying to avoid. And it almost becomes this self-fulfilling prophecy, which means that you essentially create the reality that you believe. So what's going on in the brain here? There's negativity bias, for starters. This is our brain's tendency to focus more on negative experiences than positive ones. And studies show that negative experiences have a stronger impact on our memory and emotional state. So, in other words, our brains are wired to hold on to the bad stuff more tightly. And this is why it's so hard to break free from expecting the worst. And while that negativity bias might have helped our ancestors survive, it's now pushing us toward emotional isolation. And when this is coupled with anxiety, that's when social anxiety develops, right? When you've been hurt before, your brain kicks into protection mode. You're scanning every new interaction for red flags or potential dangers. And so it just feels safer to be on guard because your brain believes that it's keeping you safe from future harm. I was actually talking to one of my clients the other day, and he's in the process of going through a pretty messy divorce and has had a long history of betrayal by partners in the past, and is really having a hard time being vulnerable and opening up. And, we kind of explored where this is coming from and how he seems to be in this pattern of choosing partners that sort of confirm that narrative that he has, that, if I'm vulnerable, somebody is going to betray me or manipulate me or whatnot. And so he stays very closed off. But this then sort of reinforces that cycle. And so if he's subconsciously choosing partners that are going to confirm this belief, then he's just sort of replaying the same thing over and over again. And so we're really working on getting him unstuck from that pattern. So how do we stop assuming the worst? A big part of it is rewiring your brain's instinctive reactions and building new habits of thinking. So one of the most effective ways to do this is through vulnerability. And I know to most people this sounds terrifying, especially if you've been hurt before. But vulnerability is really crucial for forming trust and intimacy in any relationship, whether that's romantic or personal or professional. When you allow yourself to be vulnerable, you're taking a risk, but you're also creating the possibility for connection. And there's that saying, the greater the risk, the greater the reward. And I feel that definitely applies in this case. If you're familiar with Brene Brown, she's a researcher and an expert on vulnerability and has really done extensive work showing that vulnerability is a sign of strength, not weakness. And it really takes courage to be open. But that's also the only way to create real, lasting connections. I know that a lot of people feel like vulnerability is a sign of weakness, and it's quite the opposite because it takes a lot of bravery, and discomfort in order to be vulnerable. So the key is to find balance, right? We're not throwing all caution to the wind and trusting everyone we meet, but we're also not closing ourselves off completely. So we want to be open to new experiences and relationships. And it's about just having that self-awareness of when your brain is trying to protect you with these outdated strategies, and then guiding it toward a more balanced approach. So we're not diving into the vulnerability pool head first, but you can practice this by sharing a little bit about yourself and seeing how the other person responds. So if they make you feel validated and respected, it's probably safe to share a little bit more. If they're dismissive or invalidating, then they're probably not somebody you can be too vulnerable with. So next time you catch yourself assuming the worst, pause for a moment, ask if there's any real evidence to support this fear, or if it's just your anxiety trying to protect you. And then remind yourself that while vulnerability can feel scary, it's the only way to break the cycle of self-sabotage. And over time, with practice, you'll find that it gets easier to let people in, and you might actually be surprised at how often they prove you wrong in this narrative that you can't trust others. So while assuming the worst is a common response when anxiety is sort of in the driver's seat, it doesn't have to dictate your relationships or your peace of mind. And by understanding the protective nature of it and recognizing the role of past hurts and learning to really lean into that vulnerability, you can begin to reshape the way that you view others and ultimately yourself. So I hope this video was helpful, And I'd love to hear from you in the comments how you view vulnerability, and I will see you next week.